And welcome to another edition of the OLT podcast. I'm Stacy Treckless, and with me today are Sarah White, continuing lecturer in English, and Alex Kindell, continuing lecturer in history. How are you guys doing?
Fantastic.
Wonderful. Thank you for having us.
It's one of the first times they've been on camera, so we're going to have a nice little chat. And one of the reasons why I brought you guys here today is to talk a little bit about your involvement with the concurrent enrollment program and the things that you guys are doing as far as improving concurrent enrollment classes so that they're more engaging for the high school students that are taking them.
I might say it's not so much improving the classes on our end, at least in COLA, and we're providing supplemental materials is what the dean asked me to do, is to provide a course or course shell and material that the teachers could use in their classes, not necessarily as improvement, but sort of as enhancement or additional stuff. So,
have you worked much with the teachers directly?
I do the orientation when they come in.
Okay.
They're just fantastic because you get to have all of them and you can talk together in one room and get their expertise and hear what they want to focus on too. So,
has that helped you in determining like what materials to produce and things like that?
Well, in the fall was the first time we had a chance to talk about it, but I think we're going to do our orientation in the spring this time around. So it did help to talk to them a little bit about what I had already given to them and to hear what more they wanted.
Okay. So what are some of the things like that you're doing as far as the technology part of it?
As far as the technology part of it, I was using Camtasia, which is fantastic, and I really like it. And I was making videos. We made little supplemental videos that they could watch. One of them was on evaluating source material, one of them was on documentation, one of them's on how to write a personal narrative. And so I think I have 4 of them roughly right now, and the goal was to create several more. But
okay,
that's the technology, and then of course Blackboard.
Right. Mm-hmm. About how long has it taken you to produce each of those?
Well, I did them in the summer, and I went off of a PowerPoint, and so it took a good few days to put that together. But they wanted them shorter anyway. So
okay, like between like
they were 30 minutes what I did, and they said, "How about you take it down?" Because we don't have that much time. Plus, they wanted some of them have Camtasia, and they wanted the raw data.
Oh,
so they
that's
could,
interesting.
And I provided them the PowerPoints too.
Are they 12th graders, 11th graders?
I think they're juniors.
Okay.
I think they're juniors. What is it, junior, No, sophomores. They're sophomores.
10th grade, okay.
So,
They can go to,
junior or sophomore. It depends on the school. A lot of the continuing enrollment program classes are overlaid on high school classes that are already existing because they don't have the population to actually hold just a class on continuing enrollment. So they'll combine it with an AP class or an honors class, and thus, it really depends on the high school. So it can be sophomore or junior, and there's supposed to be kind of a guideline from the guidance counselors, but it's it's so variable that it's hard to really say.
You've actually taught like a full semester of a CEP class, right? Or worked with teachers.
I've actually worked with the concurrent enrollment program as a liaison for almost a full year. I did spring last year, and I've been working on fall this year, so it's about 3/4 at this point. And I've gotten to see what goes on in the high school classrooms, and the setting is different. The way we kind of approach teaching, we tend to, I think, a lot of times focus more on lecture, at least in the history discipline, than they do at the high school. But a lot of the material is the same because the basis for these classes that are underlaying the concurrent enrollment classes are supposed to be more college level oriented, whether it be AP or honors. And so the material is very much the same. It's just a much different format. And so what I've been trying to do with my supplemental material is provide things dependent on the subject, provide lectures that expose areas that the instructors might not be as versed in, like social history, because that's one that's often ignored by the textbooks, but the AP is very interested in. But also just topics I think are important enough that could be looked at from a different angle, like the market revolution. So that one's a little bit longer. There's a lot of text on PowerPoint that will be supplemented with my lecture once I do the voiceovers. But other ones aren't as text oriented. But some of the material is denser and more difficult. So I try to I try to adjust my lectures based on the material, and that it's been interesting because everything's not so discrete in history. So I've just trying to help the teachers, give them something they can use for history or show in the class if they want.
When you say they're doing it a little bit different in high school, is it like more project, less lecture, more hands-on?
What I see is what I've seen from most of the instructors is they will have the students read the chapter beforehand, and then they will kind of discuss the chapter. Usually when I have a discussion, I have a discrete reading that's different than the textbook, an article, a primary source, or some other thing that we're working on. And they seem to do kind of this lecture discussion. I don't notice the students taking a lot of notes, which explains why when they get to us at the freshman level, they don't take notes, because they really aren't expected or required or even encouraged to take notes. A lot of handouts with kind of fill in the blanks so that they're following along during the time period. And I did get some feedback from the instructors that sounds like you've gotten the same feedback, that they want shorter segments, because it seems like in the high schools they tend to structure their courses with varied segments. Like I will go in and I'll say, okay, I'm lecturing today for 50 minutes. Enjoy. But they will do, let's talk about this document for 15 or 20 minutes. Now let me lecture for 15 or 20 minutes. Let's discuss this reading for 15 or 20 minutes. And so 20 minutes seems to be the breakdown, which is also the amount of time that a human being can actually pay attention. And as adults, I think we force ourselves to get over that. But in the high school teachers have accepted that 20 minutes is about the attention span that they can keep regularly and get material across. So they work with that more than I think we do, or at least than I do.
No, I think it's a good strategy. Now that you've done this for a year and you've seen all this, has it changed your approach to your college classes at all?
I think it's given me more empathy towards what my students are prepared for. I used to come in after the midterm and be upset that they didn't study or upset that they didn't try harder. And this year I noticed that I was much more sad in some ways, because even though the students that are going through our concurrent enrollment and program in the high schools, these are the top of the top. But I can see that if that's the best of what the students are getting in the high school, I can only imagine what goes down in the levels where the teachers are just battling to keep the students awake, or just battling to keep the students in class, or even semi-focused. If they're not requiring students in the AP level and the CEP level to take notes, they can't be doing it at the lower level. And so the students that we're getting are just not learning the skills that they need to come into our classes. So this year, I explained to them. I knew kind of what goes on in the high schools, and that I really wanted to work with them. And I always tell them I want to work with them, but I try to come at it from the approach that I now see that you're underprepared for this moment. And students have been coming and talking about being unprepared and not really knowing what they needed. And being involved in FYE, I think I'm getting a lot of the same feedback, that they are not taught to think critically. They're not taught to use time management. They're not taught how to really operate as adults. Right. So it really worries me. What do we teach them if we don't teach them how to operate as adults? They know how to operate as kids, but where are they going to get this if they don't get it from us? So it puts a bigger burden on us, I think.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. As far as writing, do you see marked improvements in their writing over time, by the time when they come from concurrent enrollment to coming here, or does it not seem to make a difference?
Well, I have seen some of their portfolios and their writing, but it's not a continual. So,
okay. So you don't really know, like, who was in concurrent enrollment, and then they get to you, and then
no. Right, no. Okay. So I'm not sure who would come out of a CEP program to us. From what it sounds as though they don't necessarily come to us, some of them. But I mean, I've seen some of the work from out of the high schools, and that's another thing too. Was this was going to kind of this Blackboard and supplemental material and this Camtasia videos was trying to kind of unify us and calibrate us and get us all on the same page, because they were doing slightly different things than we were doing. A little more literature based, a little more academic writing, and so more rhetoric for us, and so it's kind of getting us all like in the same boat instead of swimming in different directions or in directions we hadn't thought about, but. I hope. I mean, I think that they're probably doing good work.
And the only time I think I've ever come across a concurrent enrollment student in one of my classes, it was before I even knew what it was, really. It was a summer class long ago, and she ended up going to Valparaiso University. And I don't know if the concurrent enrollment class was with us or with somebody else, but I remember her being a little disappointed because she thought that she would be distinctly ready for the moment that she got to college, and she wasn't quite as ready as she thought she was. And I think it's part of the nature of the beast. In the college level, we all have different kind of expectations based off our discipline, based off of our experiences, how we've been trained. And it's a little more uniform in the high school system. It seems like they know what their expectations are there. And as young people who have to be there, they often meet just where they have to be. And what I've seen, because we have an excellent faculty here, is that we're constantly pushing them to do more. So it's okay. Well, yeah, that's meeting the assignment, but an A or an A plus is really going beyond. The A is not average. C is average. B is average with some nice things on it. But an A is really showing that you've gone above and beyond the minimal expectations of an assignment. And I just don't think that's the culture of the high school. And with all the meetings that these teachers have, it's very hard to schedule. I've found it very difficult to find time when they're not testing, or they're not meeting with a DoD representative, or the coach isn't taking the team off. It's been very hard to schedule. And I wish I could see them every semester. I wish I could just pop by and have a chat with them, even if I didn't witness a class. But they don't have the time. And in my little interstices of time, it's impossible.
They have great questions too in orientation. I mean, the stuff that we don't even think about. It was a grading question that the woman had asked us, and we're like, "Oh, we would totally fail." It was about absences, and
Yeah.
I said, "Well, we would completely fail that student." And they had missed like 7 or something.
Wow.
And of course, not in high school. It's different. So, but I mean, like again, we're kind of calibrating, kind of coming together, and hopefully with our common syllabi and whatever else we're putting in our blackboards and. That'll help them answer some of those things. It saves time.
The difference between an excused absence in high school and an excused absence here are far different.
Yeah,
and that's a big transition, and that's why we have the first year experience for students, is to kind of get some of the, I mean, maybe it should be called FYI instead of FYE, because there's a lot of things that they don't really understand. I mean, just like the time management, I don't know if you've noticed this with your freshmen, but they don't know that the syllabus is their instructions. That it is their Bible.
I had a student tell me that she had accidentally read the weekly schedule this week and was asking me a question about it. And I said, accidentally? How do you?
No, you should be looking at that every week. That should be in your calendar.
Accidentally, you should be looking at that. So yeah.
Yeah, no, it's because there, when you go to the high schools, everything's on the board. There's constant reminders. Don't forget to turn in your home, do your homework tonight for tomorrow.
I always have recommended to people to not just leave everything in the syllabus, because even the best student will not sit there and read the whole thing. They might read it once, but then they're going to forget about what all was in there. Some of our syllabi are long. I mean, I know mine is like 10 or 12 pages long. I know there's some folks in nursing who have 45-page syllabi because they have all these things they have to cover, and that's great, and they need those things. But the really important stuff, you got to remind students a few more times somewhere else. I really think
this
that's
semester,
important.
and I've noticed that I've done it more, is I've taken to almost like giving them the announcement before, almost weekly now. Like, I want you to come to class having done this.
Yeah, I send out weekly
and I love that it
announcements.
goes. I love this Blackboard announcement now it goes to the email. But yes. So now that makes a lot more sense. For why this is a group of people, I have to suddenly make announcements.
Sure.
I have to do that. So Blackboard is fantastic for that.
Yeah, it is. And I found that my younger students tend to be pretty good at going into Blackboard. They expect to find things there. And when they don't find things there, they can't find it easily. That's when they start getting either upset or maybe intimidated or worried that they're not going to do well, and then it becomes overwhelming. And then they start to flounder, for sure.
I know I've tried to embed multiple things in the for the online course. So there's the announcement. Then there's a weekly folder for each week where I keep the readings and things so that they can go in, it's week 5, here's week 5. But then I use the comment box to put little comments that they need for that week. I also put that in their discussion board, kind of the header of the discussion board. And so at this point, I'm able to say if a student really doesn't understand an assignment, they needed to reach out because it's in the syllabus, it's on the weekly folder, it's on the discussion board, it's on the announcement. At some point, if you've been halfway paying attention, you would have seen there are some instructions. You can't go through life saying, I didn't read the instructions. Nobody's going to buy that for very long.
I'm not accountable because I didn't read the instructions
Yes.
that were there.
Yeah, it's like, no, I've had them so many places that, it should have hit you in the face.
So just to kind of sum up, if you were to talk to any faculty member out there who might be watching this, what would be like the number one thing you would tell them that you've learned from this experience of working with the CEP program that they should be taking into their classes with them?
I need a moment to think. Does Sarah need a moment to
I
think?
learned that the human attention span is 20 minutes. I guess just to change just how to alter my expectations, because maybe I've been teaching to a student I had in my head that don't no longer exist. I mean, I've seen myself make adjustments all the way across year after year, but it kind of wakes you up to the changes that you might need to make. Like you said, change your expectations a little bit of what they've come in with versus what I expect, and try to meet these people halfway.
I think we need to meet them and bring them up. And JFK said, rising tides lift all boats. And he was talking about the economy, but I think if we bring them in and we understand their expectations, but really still say, this is where you've got to be, because no matter, I think for me, I didn't really change any of my views on it. I think I just realized how much more important it is. Yeah. Because when they go out in the world and they have to compete against, whether it's students from IUN or West Lafayette or maybe some other university, they're in a much wider competition than just the kids they were with over at Hobart. It's a far bigger pool, and as fish, we become smaller and smaller, and we've got to find, as people out in the job market, we have to find a way to make ourselves distinct. And I don't think they want to be distinct. I think they want to just kind of flow down the river and find their spot, and it's just not going to work that way. And so we have to keep up the good fight. I just think we have to keep fighting the good fight, because no matter how it works out in terms of the big national conversation, we're the ones on the ground and we see what's needed, and we've got to keep our voices heard. And it's election season, so I'm kind of in my electioneering mode, like go out and make your voice be heard. But I think as educators, we need to do that as well, because I think the policymakers, I don't think they know what we see.
Well, and reach across the disciplines, and not stay in our offices and our departments and not figure out what's going on in history, English, chemistry, and math. You've got to talk together, because it's something we're seeing in all of our classes.
It is.
Absolutely.
It is. Mm-hmm. Excellent point.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank you, ladies, for coming in and having this chat. This is really good stuff. I learned a lot, too. So
Well, thanks for having us.
Others are out there learning something, too. And feel free to email any of us if you have more questions.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.